Thank you, guys. It's such an exciting thing to be here with you, to talk about my lesson from Spider-Man. Again, I'm your morning news anchor on Spectrum Bay News 9, Erica Riggins. And when I got the call to do this, I just couldn't wait. But there is something I want you to think about, something, you know, even more exciting that I want to share with you that you may not have realized. Spider-Man and his friends actually, well, before I share this with you, this is very important. There's about 100 people, I think about 100 people in here. Can we keep this a secret? I was asked to keep this a secret. Just on this campus, just several hundred people on the campus. Can you do that? Yes. Can you do that? All right. Spider-Man and his friends actually live here in Tampa Bay. Have you seen them? You have, right. They live here. And so some of his friends, they decided to come up and show you. I have their guests here. I said, come on, they're excited. They want to celebrate with you. Can I bring the Spider-Man up here? Can come say hello? Spider-Man, come show your Spider-Man poses. Come on the carpet. Show your Spider-Man poses. We got one more, little shy. This is their first debut, actually. He's just gonna watch, that's fine. 3, 4, and 5 years old. 5 sitting there a little bit shy. 3 years old, 4 years old. Wave, guys, thank you for doing that. Their first debut. They're excited. They even brought these gifts I'm gonna give. You guys see these? These are really cool. They brought these for everybody. Everybody gets one of these. Is that cool? Everybody gets one of these. I'll let you take that one. Okay. But that one's not yours. You already had yours. And, so they brought gifts. Everybody gets those at the end of the show. So thank you. But those are my kids, 3, 4, and 5 years old. Lawson, we'll work on his acting. We'll get him some classes and some lessons. He's a little shy. But it was actually 2002 when the first Spider-Man movie came out. Who here was born before 2002? And raise your hand. Before 2000, 20 years ago. Okay, I was too. I'm 50 years old. I was, so yeah, 1971, long time ago. That was actually when the first Spider-Man movie came out, for the young folks in the room who may not realize that. And that's when I learned this lesson. It was when Uncle Ben, you guys have heard it, it's weaved throughout the movies. Uncle Ben, what did he say to Spider-Man? With great power comes... great responsibility. That's right. With great power comes great responsibility. So it was a lesson for you too, not just for me. So what does that mean when you think about that? I brought an anchor brings their own teleprompter. Don't you love that? I brought my own teleprompter. When I think about with great power comes great responsibility, I want you to think about your careers. You're contemplating that now because you're in middle school. You're thinking about what those careers might be. So when I look out in the crowd, I see future engineers, I see future scientists, future pilots. Do we have future doctors, lawyers in the house? Do we have some? Yes. So with great power comes great responsibility. It applies to all of those careers, and it applies to my own too. Great. Wait, one thing. Do we have future teachers in the house? Do we have future teachers in the house? Yes. Future members of the military in the house. And service. Yes, yes, absolutely. With great power comes great responsibility. It applies to all of those careers, and it applies to mine as well as a journalist, because our goal is to inform and educate and guide you with the stories. Our goal is to give you news that matters to help you get prepared for your day. And even more than that, you know, for me personally, it's about keeping you safe. It's your safety. So when I think about middle school students and the middle school stories we've told, I found one here. The ones that stay with me the most are the ones that revolve around your safety. So, for instance, a few months ago, you might remember this, a 13-year-old on a school bus stop. A man comes up, he tries to take her. She fights back. Y'all remember seeing this a few months ago? She fights back. She was lucky. She was able to get away from him. He's in jail now. It took a time to get him. He's in jail now. She's safe. It doesn't always end that way. Stories that matter for your safety. So as a journalist, our great power comes great responsibility. So it's a powerful role to tell you what you need to care about when you leave for your day. But responsibility, it has to be accurate. Is that right? The story has to be. How many times have you seen something, you see a misspelling, or you see a problem and you call, or you say they got that wrong? Yes, yes. Responsibility, that shouldn't happen. I can remember a station in the past where someone called and said, what college did they go to? What are you doing with that? You know, and so with great power comes great responsibility. That story has to be accurate for it to matter to you, and it needs to be time sensitive. What does that mean? It needs to be on time. If heaven forbid there's an Amber Alert that involves Lithia and a student here, a local Amber Alert, when do I need to bring that story to you so that you can help find that in our community? Fast, as soon as possible. That's a breaking news story every 15 minutes, a local Amber Alert. That's a breaking news story every 15 minutes if it's a student here in our community, 7 counties from Citrus all the way down to Manatee County. And so that's something you want to think about, accurate, Correct, timely. But the other thing, when I think about personal responsibility, with great power comes great. I was talking about professional responsibility. There's personal responsibility. And this is something you guys can all connect to because it's not specific to journalism. So, when I roll in at 3 o'clock in the morning to bring you the news at 5 a.m., I have to be thinking fast, thinking critically. So I'm up at 1:15 every day to bring you the news. Personal responsibility with great power. It's a powerful job. All of the careers have an element of power, but there's responsibility. My first producer, the senior producer, is in at midnight. So think about that position. And that's a senior producer. So she's worked her way up to come in at midnight. You might not look at a shift that way. And so this is a woman who comes in, she starts our shows as we prepare what happened overnight to share with you for 5 a.m., but she comes in at midnight, she leaves at 8, she goes home, naps, reads a book, watches TV, does some relaxation, goes back to sleep, gets up and goes back to work in the same day. That's hard. When you think about the firefighters who work 24 hours on, that's hard. We know a few of them here in Hillsborough County. It's a hard thing. My first career, actually, my degree's in mechanical engineering, so I was an equipment engineer starting out at Motorola right out of college. I was on call 24 hours for equipment. We manufactured parts or tested parts that went into the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. And I got calls in the middle of the night. Hey, your machine is down. You need to come work on that. I can remember being on a date, and I said, hey, I have to go. My machine is down, and he thought I was joking. With great power comes great responsibility. So I want you to think about the job you want to do. I asked, everybody's thinking about their job, right, with the show. Everyone's pretty much has an idea about what they might want to pursue after high school. Is that correct? The show of hands? Our young people in the crowd? So don't just think about what you're doing. Think about what's required to do it. I get a lot of calls from people who say, I want to be a news anchor, I want to be a reporter, and we've seen many of them, but they may not want to get up at 1:15 in the morning to do the job, right? I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, so when I talk to kids and I share that, sometimes they say, I go to bed at that time. Hopefully no one in here goes to bed at that time. And so those are things that, you want to think about. If I am out late, when I get the call from friends, and these are people in my business, hey, when I first started here as weekend anchor, back in 2005, they were like, hey, come, we're having a party on the weekend. And I said, oh, well, but I got to be at work at, 3 a.m. And they said, oh, you can just take a nap. One thing I learned, you can't just take a nap, though. It doesn't really work. You can want to take a nap. You can try. You can get lucky. But you can't just decide, I'm going to take a nap from this time to this time. It just doesn't work. And so I had to find the courage, because you want to make your friends happy. They mean well, but you have to say no. This applies to you when you think of your schoolwork and when you're asked to do things, because you're getting more and more power and freedom every single day as you get older. But imagine if you turn on your morning news at 5 a.m. and I'm there, I get in at 1:15, had to be camera ready at 3, which means hair and makeup has to be done. And I do that. There's not like in New York where people are doing that for you. And so you're ready to go at 3, thinking critically. Imagine if you turn it on at 5, you're like, are her eyes red? Is she slurring her words? What's happened to Erica? I don't even understand what she's saying. Would you feel like I'm bringing you news that matters to you? I know, I've been in the business a long time. There are people who've rolled in that way. They didn't last in the business because they didn't realize that part about great power means great responsibility. And it applies to you too when you think about it. When I think about middle school students, what are some of the things that are giving you more power? Is it, walking to school on your own, going to a friend's house on your own, right? Without mom or dad driving you? You're not old enough to drive yet, but perhaps you have some friends who drive, and mom and dad gives you the freedom to ride with them. You have obligations with your extracurricular activities, with your homework. What do you need to do to be effective when we think about great power and great responsibility? Is that getting enough sleep? Sleep is when you talk to someone who works at the third shift and overnight shift, sleep is the number one thing, more important than food. Is that eating right? Are those the things you think about for great responsibility? Is that studying? Is that staying curious? Those are things you have to do to make sure you are successful. And it doesn't change from here to college. And I have to tell you, I mentioned some of the friends. These are adults. These are people with, degrees, master's degrees. They're always going to be those friends who try to pull you in a direction, one way or the other. They mean well. Let's say you have that big test, and you're in college now. You have that big test you need to study for, and they're going to say, hey, there's this party. Can you come to this party with me? You can take a nap. You can take a nap, you can do it, right, and still study. You have to decide for yourself, is that the best thing for me? Is that the responsibility? Things that are responsible typically are not fun. Would parents agree with me? I'm talking to the parents now, because they're going to learn this. I'm 50 years old. They're going to, you learn. I'm still learning every day. Doing the right thing, personal responsibility, oftentimes isn't the fun thing. Is that right? Would parents agree? It's not the fun thing. It's not the thing we want to do. But in the end, that's what pays off. That's what got me here. So for instance, when you think about personal responsibility and sacrifices, personal sacrifices come with that. My first TV job, when I left engineering, I went from making like $65,000 a year, my last job at Motorola. I was actually a workforce development manager, so I was just required to come into the schools to get you guys excited about engineering, because we don't have enough engineers to work. We still don't. That was back in the early 2000s, right? And we still don't. We haven't fixed that. Hang on, Lawson. Now he wants to be part of the show now. Now he wants to be like, hang on one second. Okay, we'll get to you in just a second. So that first TV job, I left Motorola. I had got my courage. I was in a communications role in Motorola, working with you guys. And my first TV job was in Sherman, Texas. There's several 100,000 people there. I made $8.50 an hour. So going from $65,000 a year back in 2000, to $8.50 an hour to be weekend anchor reporter. I mean, I passed a Chick-fil-A sign every day that said cashier starting at $9.50 an hour. Can you imagine the psychology of that? I'm in a suit, I'm the weekend anchor, I'm bringing the news to this community. It's the Texoma region, so on the border of Oklahoma and Texas. And at $8.50 an hour, and I passed the Chick-fil-A sign, cashier started at $9.50. That's tough, right? But it's a sacrifice you make, because I could see the end. Stay the course would be my advice. Stay the course. When you set your goal, stay the course, and you're going to have to make those sacrifices. That's being responsible so that you can get to where you want to be. So you might be wondering, well, why would journalists make $8.50 an hour? How does that kind of, in television, it's not just news, in television in general, whether you're watching ESPN or whatever, how you grow, your salary, in this case your salary, is based on your market, TV markets. Anybody familiar with TV markets? Yes. Okay. Yes. So Sherman, Texas, that you've probably not heard of. Anybody heard of Sherman? Okay, so yes, it's an hour north of Dallas. I grew up in Austin, Texas. I'm from the Lone Star State. There's only several 100,000 people there. So you make your mistakes in a small market, so you're paid accordingly. We're number 11. There are 210 TV markets. We're number 11. What's number one? The teacher who knows. Number one, New York, LA, Chicago, those are millions of people. So if you go visit one of those places and you're watching, millions of people are watching. So that's why some of those anchors make millions of dollars, right? We're number 11, so that, it's not several 100,000 people. So my first live shot, a bank robbery. I was so nervous. So the first, and I have self-esteem. I'm confident. I gave up a lot to do this job. I'm standing there, the camera's there, the photographer's counting me, he's going 5, 4, but I couldn't stop my paper from shaking. So this was a paper, it wasn't this little fancy little tablet here. It's shaking. It's like, why? What do I do? He's counting me down. He's being dramatic, counting down. They don't do that now. I'm like, what is he doing? And this is a live shot for a bank robbery. I'm in front of the bank, and I could not get the paper to start shaking, because you have to grow. And you have to grow, practice. So I asked him, I said, zoom in, can you just show me from here, because I can't stop my paper from shaking. And so that's why small market. You start small so that you can learn and make your mistakes. Typically in my business, that's where you start. So if I was in Tampa Bay, if you're watching me and my paper's shaking, what would you think? Where did she come from, right? Because there are millions of people here, it's very different. Yet, they always want to be part of the show. I'm a new mom, I'm learning, they always want to be part of the show. Again, great power comes great responsibility. Stay the course, it's so important. But remember to make those sacrifices along the way. And when your friends, and they love you, when your friends come up and say, hey, can you do this, can you do that, can we go do this, think about it if that's something you can actually do. They'll still be your friend. And this is something I learned in the last 15 years. You got to learn to say no, because you have a goal. You have a goal, and you will pay the price if you may perhaps pay the price if you say yes. So, as I come to a close, I'm not sure what the time is. I had to do this because I would talk to you 30 minutes if I didn't. Otherwise, when I think of professional responsibility, we already talked about that. You talked about doing your homework. It so matters. I wish when I went back to school, if I could go back, I'm 50. If I could go back. If I could study harder, I was good enough. I went to the University of Texas, graduated. I worked as, got my engineering degree. But wow, what if I had those scholarships? How much easier would it have been on my mom, who's sitting right over here? Look at her nodding. She's like, oh yes, I remember writing the check, which was a smaller check for now. So, study. Look at the opportunities that are there. Work with your teachers. They love you. They wouldn't be here if they're making sacrifices being here, financially and personally. You know, I've interviewed many of them for A+ Teacher. They're making so many steps. They would not be here if they did not love you. They want to see you be successful. And just stay curious. If I can say, read as much as you can. Got to remember, hang on, Lawson, we're almost done. Read as much as you can, explore as much as you can. And remember, what is the line? With great power comes great responsibility. It matters. Thank you so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.